The movement was begun by a scientist who discovered, quite by accident, these signals being sent. Please understand, they are safe as long as they are not discovered.
They want their weapon.
Look out for Charlie.
I want that son of a bitch dead. I want him dead.
In my last video, someone came along and said I wouldn't be surprised in 5 or 10 years down the road that they would blame some virus or COVID or non-vaccinated people for the voice of God phenomena. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they're doing that with. They've been doing that with Morgellons for over 20 years now. People go in with this stuff coming out of their body, in their body, and they walk out with a delusional diagnosis. You know, that happens all the time. And they're doing that for a reason. They're hiding that for a reason so that they can blame that on something else later. And people are going to come forward and go, yeah, but I've had this for 20 years. They're going to ignore those people and blame it on something else. All of this is going to be blamed on something else in that way. That is one of the main reasons why they've hidden these voice of God weapons for so long, and these audio weapons, to do what they're doing now. And everybody that hears them is psychotic, right? And it doesn't matter how old you are now, how young you are, they're going to use that to add to the artificial, man-made mental health narrative. Like the doctor that called because he was hearing them in his home, just in his home. And it says Adina's top AOSI doctor calls 911 to report he hears voices, sparking mental health concerns. This guy is 45, 50 years old and he just begins to hear voices. Bullshit. Doesn't happen in nature. So anybody that believes this is a moron. But they will use this type of stuff later. They have been hiding it. That's why there are so many of these operator doctors out there that are saying it's just people picking, when it's clearly not. You can see it with a microscope or even a jeweler's loupe and see what is going on. It's ridiculous. On top of that, you have doctors who know what it is, but they can't say anything, or else they will lose their license to practice, and then they can kiss it goodbye. They don't want to kiss it goodbye, so they don't say anything. They play the game. Now, over the years, I've received some ridiculous comments, many ridiculous comments. Many have made some very, very stupid statements. I just received a comment that said this: nonsense. Just said nonsense to all of it. Why make such a simple, half-witted, yet dismissive comment? Because they can't say anything else. Anything else they said would trap them into a debate. Over the past 10 years on this channel, I have given people more proof that this technology is at work than NASA has given proof that we went to the moon. And that's not an opinion, that's a straight fact. It doesn't matter whether you believe that we went to the moon or not, that's irrelevant. However, NASA made that claim in 1969, and over the years after that, people have asked to study the Apollo data. Many people asked to look at NASA's telemetry data from the moon missions. Many people filed FOIA requests. Then, in 2001, NASA claimed that they just lost it. This wasn't 4 reels of Tascam reel-to-reel tape. This was 14,000 reels of telemetry data. Truckloads. Moon rocks given to different nations turned out to be just petrified wood. This is not a rumor. This is straight fact. Many people wanted to analyze the original moon landing footage, not the rebroadcasted low-resolution images that were sent over television airwaves. They wanted the original footage. And when it came time to hand over the goods, NASA claimed that they lost it. Literally lost all the original video footage of the moon landings. People came forward wanting to listen to and analyze all the Apollo audio tapes, hoping to listen back to all those historical moments. Strangely, NASA claims to have lost all of the Apollo audio footage as well. This is an absurd amount of reel-to-reel tape, and it was just lost. Most reel-to-reel tapes store about 25 minutes of audio, between 20 and 30 minutes, making losing all those tapes the equivalent of a semi-truck owner just losing his truck. Yet, I have some operator coming to my channel after giving you a decade's worth of evidence, and this operator simply writes nonsense. Not good enough. Since I've given you more direct evidence than NASA ever has, it would be your job to start a channel and explain exactly why all this information is nonsense in just as much detail as I have given over the years, with no tricks, lies, spin, or fuckery. I have given you tons of evidence of this audio in the air, in homes, straight up audio signals, not radio signals, audio signals. And I have proven over and over and over that they are not ghosts, they are not goblins, they are technology. That sounds like a broken fax machine, doesn't it? Yet, this guy can just come along and write nonsense. It's not going to work anymore, man. We're in 2023, we are not in 2014 any longer. That won't work. Nice try, but it will not work. So you are literally at the point where you have to find another tactic. It's not going to work anymore, and people aren't buying it. You know, it took a long time, but we've got a lot of subscribers here. You know, it took 10 years where someone else can be promoted and have that in a day. But after 10 years, we've got over 14,000 people who are interested in this and understand what's going on. And they're getting it. And that's a lot. And that word spreads. It spreads at the dinner table. It spreads with their friends. It spreads when they're out. It spreads when they're just talking to people in general. So this is why they're worried. And this is why operators like that come along and write stuff like that. Again, this is not a moon debate. I don't care. It's just a fact that there's more evidence that this exists than they can give evidence that we went to the moon. It's just a fact. Now, there are a lot of people out there trying to make the connection between people who have received the pokety poke and hearing voices. Do not fall for that weaponized trap. It is designed to make people look stupid later. This has been around for decades, decades and decades, and they have been perfecting it for decades. They used this back in Santa Cruz in 1970. Granted, back then it was a much larger operation to do than it is now. The signal is everywhere. It wasn't everywhere back then. But they used it back then on John Linley Frazier, shown right here, who was just a mechanic and began hearing the voice of God that turned him into a radical environmentalist. And he killed people hearing this voice of God because he truly believed it was God telling him that he had to do these things. Back then it was a lot more believable than it is now because it wasn't happening to people in mass. Then, in the same city, less than a year later, you had Herbert Mullen, and God started talking to him. Normal guy, just like John Frazier. He was told to go out and kill people to stop a catastrophic earthquake from God in the same damn city. And people aren't putting this together. So it has nothing to do with vaxxed people, people who have had the pokety poke. It has everything to do with the fact that this weapon has been around for years and years. So be careful of that. It's a big trap. And there are a lot of people talking that kind of stuff now to try to get people trapped into this. Here somebody says, San Diego passing a lot of new mental health laws. I don't watch TV, but my dad does, and seems that's the new buzzword on all the news media programs. Mental health. It is, and there's a purpose for that. They're creating this, and then they can go after the people that are having these issues. It's sort of an artificial eugenics program. So if you don't like a group of people, they can all begin to hear voices, and then you can just go pick them up. Mandatory. And they'll make it mandatory with all these incidents that are happening with guns. They came out years and years ago, and said, you know, there's no more stigma. Come forward with your mental health thing. And that people are proud of it now. You know, you get these these younger people that rattle off all the artificial mental illnesses that they have. Like they're proud of it. Badge of honor, right? Well, I've got this and I've got that. Well, great. You moron. Perfect specimens for the new normal, right? That's the way it's going. It is weaponized. All of this is weaponized. And that is all these content creators talk about is mental health. Mental health, mental health, mental health. Doing commercials for mental health. Mr. Ballin had problems and was snapping until he had better help. You know, and then he goes on and on about all that. He took that turn for the money. And you are basically selling your soul and other people's souls for them when you start getting into that kind of shit. Let's go on to another comment here, because this is kind of important. It says here, very weird. I would not do what a voice in my head said. Why are they? Now, before I get into my reply here, let's think about the old days. Let's think about a case that I just talked about, Herbert Mullen. He was told by God to stop a catastrophic earthquake by killing people. So this was a good guy. You know, he went to church. He did all the good guy stuff back then. He was told that by killing a few people, he would stop this catastrophic earthquake that would kill many people. So he thought he was doing good. And back then, didn't happen so much, so he really believed it was the voice of God. When it is a directionless sound like that, and it is 1970, you are more apt to believe something like that than something, now. So my response was, the tricks and psychological manipulation that has been developed since this tech's inception has had decades to cultivate techniques that work. And they do work. It isn't mind control, it's mind manipulation. Only super weak people follow orders in the first place. However, if you are attacked with audio weapons and slowly convinced that your neighbor, your family, or someone nearby is doing this to you, there is a good chance that you will retaliate to make it stop. Especially after you've been subjected to it for weeks or months and have had very little sleep. 99% of the time, people are not receiving commands. They are manipulated into doing things that are against their better judgment under normal conditions, and actions they would never do unless taken by surprise and convinced of something that really isn't happening. That is exactly what this does in many cases. If you were attacked with this weapon and convinced it was a friend, neighbor, or family member doing it to you, your statement that you would never do what they said could very well be proven untrue. Commands are a common misconception of this weapon, and that's true. Many people are like, I wouldn't do that. Well, they don't do that most of the time. Let's take the Herbert Mullen case, for example. He thought he was doing a service by just killing a few people to save a lot. Then you had John Fraser that thought he was saving the earth by taking care of a few people that were killing it. There's always a good angle to it that they use. Or these people want the torture to stop. This doesn't come and go like people think. Oh, it just says something to you once in a while. It is yammering to these people 24/7, 365. It never stops. It keeps them awake for weeks, months, whatever. It's like a phone call in your ear that you cannot hang up from. That is what these people don't get. And then it slowly convinces them, for example, that someone close to them, nearby, is doing it to them, and they retaliate to try to make the torture stop. That is how this works. It is manipulation, not kill John Lennon, mind control. It's not how it works. And if you've never witnessed this up close and personal, it's in many stories from the past. Pay attention to what law enforcement says and then what the person actually said. For example, David Berkowitz said many things, and then law enforcement twisted what he said and claimed he said something else. So, some guy comes forward and he says, the voices, my brother was doing it. I was convinced it was my brother, so I went and killed him. And then law enforcement comes out and says,
yeah, the voices were telling him to kill his brother.
The media spins it. So most of the time, you're not getting a real story. You're getting a twisted story. Voices told him to kill, when in fact, the person was manipulated to do it. And even John Lennon's killer, Mark David Chapman, was subjected to voices in the walls that he called the little people that would talk to him. They convinced him that John Lennon was a phony and to take out this hypocrite phony. So clearly he had a violent or a mean streak in him, and then they were able to cultivate and use that mean streak against him to get something done that they wanted, which was to kill John Lennon. They didn't like John Lennon at all. I don't necessarily blame them for not liking him, but you didn't have to kill him. But that was the whole point of these weapons, was to see if you could get them, a person subjected to them, to kill somebody that you wanted them to kill. First, it was just to get them to kill. Then it was to get them to kill who you wanted to. And how do we do that? And now they are just having people do random violence because of the mental health narrative, to make it look and appear as the whole goddamn world's gone insane, when it is completely and totally artificial. Now, someone asked if there was a difference between sound weapons and voice of God weapons. Yes, there is. Let me point out something about voice of God weapons first. This is what they don't tell you. These people hearing these voices, most of them have artificial tinnitus that stays with them and or morphs into the voices. Now, you can also have ELF or very high frequency as a tinnitus that you can't even hear. So what that tinnitus does is it works as a sound bed, like sort of a white noise sound bed, and then people can hear things in the room, in the air, that other people can't hear. That is what happens. and then usually that will morph into voices. They also don't tell you the fact that most of these people do not hear the voices just in their head. It sounds like it's coming from the walls, or it sounds like it's coming from outside or just outside their window. So even when I say this is a phone call that they can't hang up from, it is voices. That does not mean it's directly in their ear all the time. Now, it can get close and sound like it's close, but it is not in their ear all the time. Now, an audio weapon, if you were to put gunfire into an area, let's say like the Las Vegas incident, and you put gunfire into an area down a street where it isn't happening, everybody is going to hear that. They're going to hear gunfire going off, just like the OP Rock guys heard. They heard a firefight. They heard rocket-propelled grenades. But it wasn't really happening. They were hearing the sounds of this. That's an audio weapon. It's not a voice of God weapon. Can the same frequencies do the same thing? Yes. It all depends on what you are sending into an area, what ELF and what harmonics are resonating in that area. So of course, it's the same thing. The strange sounds heard around the world, those are sound weapons. People are hearing what sounds like metal scraping in a factory in the sky, basically. It's not there, but everybody is hearing it. That's a sound weapon. But somebody in a room is hearing sounds or voices. You know, some people are hearing sirens now. Isn't that strange? Sirens, and no one else in the room hears them. You know, it's like, wow. See, somebody came to Cora, whether this is a weaponized question or not, I've heard of this more and more. Why would you suddenly start hearing police sirens in your mind? And then the Cora shill goes on to explain that it's an auditory hallucination. No, it's not. Now, if we got into this case, if it was real and we got into the case and I asked the person 20 questions, it would turn out that they had tinnitus and various other factors that went along with the symptoms that would explain exactly why they were hearing this. It's unbelievable that this still goes on in 2023. So yes, there is a big difference between audio weapons and V2K. The difference is everybody hears audio weapons like gunfire, and one person in a room, one or two people in a room will hear voice of God weapons. It is the same weapon though. It is just how it's applied. And these doctors out there do exactly what they accuse other people of doing. They ignore certain facts, certain symptoms that are continuously popping up in these cases, or they take those symptoms and weave them in and bend them to fit something and try to make it fit into the symptoms list. And then it's weaponized from there out. But that is what they're doing. They will ignore key factors. Like so many people, it begins with a audible, artificial tinnitus and then morphs into voices, high-pitched voices that will eventually move down into full-frequency voices. It may sound like a sleigh bell jingling along in their ear for a long, long time before that. And that's been recorded and documented on this channel. Now, this is the last time I'm going to answer this one because it's been answered many, many times. Someone asked, would sleeping in a car offer any relief? No. The signal is everywhere. And a car has a wiring system in it. Don't use a toy, some downloaded app. Take a real EMF detector, radio frequency detector, and take it into a car and see what happens. You're going to find out that it has a wiring system just like a home, and it is full of garbage. Plus, like I said, the signal is everywhere. It's a bad idea, and it's a bad idea to be paying rent or making a mortgage payment and sleeping in a car all the time when you've got a house to sleep in. And then someone asked, what about wearing earplugs? No. It's like putting tissue in front of a semi. Earplugs are not going to help. Now, here is somebody who has really twisted things that I've said in the past. And it says, Charlie, you believed in changelings, ghost haunting, or cleansing nano. It is today's criminal element. So they are saying that I believed in changelings, ghost haunting, or cleansing nano. I talked about cleansing nano and fungal elements out of the body, and heavy metals and shuanella. I never believed in changelings or ghost haunting. I did believe in hauntings when I was a kid. I don't believe that anymore. So what they're doing is trying to say that it's people. It's today's criminal element. The gangs and cartels are using unrestricted warfare tactics. No, it's not gangs and cartels. They are not going to give this type of technology to people like that. This is way more important than any other weapon that ever existed, ever. They are not just going to give it to people. But this one was funny. Changelings and ghost hauntings. Now, something very interesting that I found about this guy that told me that I believed in changelings, he said it was today's criminal element, the gangs and the cartels. Let's go back a little bit. I decided to search his name. The funny part is, most of my old videos, my really old videos, are about nano, fungus, and Shewinella and what they can do to a person. Here he says, look out for nanos, Charlie. Look out for nanos, Charlie. And then he says, damn, Charlie, it is nanotechnology. Nanotechnology, nanotechnology. Charlie, research. I did research a long time ago. But now he's saying that it's not the stuff, it's the criminal cartels. That's why you have to look out for these usernames that are constantly contradicting themselves in what they're saying. So it was nanos, and I needed to research that because I'm stupid and I'm not getting it. But in the end, I believed in nano changelings, which is fucking ridiculous, and ghost hauntings, and it's really the criminal cartels. One says here, targeted individuals are being shown how the universe really works. No, I don't believe that at all. I would advise against anybody using the targeted individual terminology or any of that TI lingo. It's weaponized. Quite frankly, it sounds like the definition of paranoia, overt paranoia. It's weaponized from beginning to end, and all the crazy terminology. Stay away from it. And there are many people out there trying to weave some type of ascension or simulation type thing into this. This is unnatural. And even if the world were a simulation, this has nothing to do with it. This is a weapon being used against people. And quite frankly, I'm not even sure if there are quote-unquote TIs anymore. This has gone en masse, and many people are being affected by these types of weapons and weaponized RF and weaponized ELF, whether they realize it or not. And if you look around, really look around, there are fake channels out there, clearly fake channels, right, that have been purchased with like 2,000 subscribers, 1,000 subscribers, whatever, and they talk about this TI business all the time. And they are the ones using, overusing this TI terminology, all of it. So think about that. Really roll that around in your brain. Why would they be overusing that terminology? Because they love it. I can take you back to the videos and the information that started all that, and it's all weaponized. And that's it for now. Look out for Charlie.
They're just frequencies, dude. Man-made frequencies. That's it.
No! No, 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 no! No! Not this fucking time! No fucking way! No fucking way! No fucking way! No fucking way!
Son of a bitch, I want him dead.